She's probably still trying to get caught up.
That's what happens when you're late. You get the best seat.
Oh, here's a funny story on her.
Yeah.
She tells me this
We'll
was
just
I'm
do
going to
it.
be gone to Philadelphia.
We'll just go close in on you.
Weekend, can I get it?
There's Greg.
Hey, make sure you see the Liberty Bell.
Greg's,
Look at this shirt. It says Mac.
She said, that's not.
Greg's having the conversation with himself.
Liberty Bell's a thing. Everybody in the class was like, you've never heard of it? So she sent a picture of her at Liberty Bell for the whole class to see. It was pretty clever. So if you think of it, ask her about it. How's Liberty Bell?
The Liberty Bell. That's a gigantic.
That's not a thing.
So let's start, shall we? So the first video that we watched was on point of view. Remember, we talked about that earlier today. A question that they asked that Brad and Ann answered online, which I thought was their answers were really interesting, was your persona as a storyteller isn't separate from the role that you play. It's you, but it's also a choice in how you see the story. Is there an experience you've had that you would like to narrate from a different perspective or point of view? Brad said he'd like to narrate his high school basketball team as from a coach's point of view. And Ann said she'd like to talk about her teenage self from her parents' point of view, like how they saw their kid. So, I don't know. Is there something that you'd like to tackle from a different person's point of view?
No, but I think along those same lines, I think it'd be interesting to think about like how a kid would talk about you as a teacher or talk about your class. Like I think that would be an interesting exercise in looking at yourself as a teacher.
We're always trying to analyze, data. Like when you're designing a test for math, I try to look at, okay, what are the common errors going to occur here, and how's the student going to look at this? So I always try to put myself in their shoes. And freshman boys, it's easy for me to put myself in their shoes because I'm just as silly and immature as they are. So it's not oh, do good, girls. I don't relate to them.
I think there's a level of empathy, like when you do that. Like I can empathize with my students, like when they're feeling overwhelmed or where they're like I can see things from their point of view when they're struggling to maybe keep up with their work, but I have a hard time understanding their point of view when they just can't get a concept that's very clear to me. Like we're writing summary responses and there's a very specific rebuttal progression that we teach constantly. Like you talk about the counterclaim and you reiterate that counterclaim, but then you go back to the claim and we teach it over and over again. And even now on their third summary response, some of them are still not understanding that concept. And I have a hard time kind of seeing their perspective. Like, why is this so hard when they've been taught it now 3 times? Like, I can't, and they're pretty bright kids. I don't understand why there's such a struggle to get it. Like, I can't see their perception of that.
I wish I could go back in time and think about myself as a high school student and I don't get lazy. I don't get it at all. And I wonder if when I was in high school, if I was lazy, but I think it would help me understand them a little bit more because I just do not get, I wasn't a great kid, but I would never, if I was going to have a missing assignment, I would have just cheated and copied and turned in something. And I would never have ever.
So I think I would call that apathy more than lazy, because some lazy kids care. They procrastinate or they're just lazy, but the kids that are apathetic, that just, I think there's a variance there. So, but I totally understand what you're saying. It's very frustrating. It's hard to relate to that.
It is, and
even as a procrastinator,
especially with kids that struggle too, because you're you should be working the hardest.
Exactly. Or even the kids who complain about the level of work that they have to do and all the things they have going on in their lives. I want to just be welcome to adulthood. How will you survive? How will you do this? But I want to go back in time and think about if I felt that way as a kid. I don't remember feeling that way. I don't ever remember like thinking I was overwhelmed or like not doing things because I was frustrated or like, I don't know. I would just like to be able to like speaking of like going like, what story would you want to tell? I would want to like have that Audra tell the story of like how I became this person and if it's like different and if I was ever that kid. I don't get it.
So I think it's more like what I'm hearing us say is it's not so much hard to relate to kids like because they're younger. It's harder for us to relate to those kids whose brains don't work the same way as ours.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's not about like, because I can relate to a freshman who pick it up and get it. Like you're saying, the concepts that are to me very easy. So those kids are easy to help in school because you explain it one more time and they're like, oh, I got that. It's much harder to connect and to relate, like to put yourself in the perspective of those people whose brains are totally wired differently. And my daughter is one of them. Man, she is like, I have to help her do her 6th grade math every single night. And it is like repeatedly shoving a pencil in my eye because like my 3rd grade son can do it faster than she can do her 6th grade math. And it's just, she's not stupid. She's just like, math does not come easy for her. And so it just takes us so long. And I have to sit there and go, because I just want to go, it's 42, come on, it's 42. Like, how many times? But I can't. I just have to sit there and go, okay, figure it out, you know, so it's so much harder to put yourself in the perspective of like brains that don't work the same way than age, you know what I'm saying?
That's gonna work as a parent because so many parents now get this or admit this at conferences. How many do you end up solving the problem for them? They're like, yeah, not helping them.
Well, and
Walk
I'm not to
away
say
and
that
get frustrated.
I don't get frustrated. I mean, we've had some battles already in 6 weeks of school, but yeah, I'm trying not to. And that's a hugely other different perspective jumping off at that point. My husband, who I've told you guys, basically raised himself, right? Because his dad wasn't in the picture. Mom was 16. So he never had help ever in his whole life with homework. So even the fact that I'm sitting next to my daughter, like helping guide her through homework, he's like, you're just doing it for her. And I get so mad because I've just given like an hour of my time to help her do this homework in the way I think is appropriate. But in his mind, like help is
Cheating.
that's way more than he ever got. So why am I doing it? It's very interesting. And then but I look back and I go, but he never had a single person help him ever. So he thinks that's way more above and beyond what she even needs, you know, like figure it out on your own. So it's just that perspective piece is huge in how you view the way things should be done.
Yeah.
You know?
One of the lines it says, and it's a little bit out of context, but our age affects the way we view life and our experiences. So the high school kid is we're arguing the undeveloped mind. It's not the full maturity or capacity. Are we ever? I mean, I guess we could argue that too, but I think it is interesting. And I would be thinking about the time and the space and we'll be cognizant. Like I just remember doing things to do things in high school. Like I was just compliant all the time, and not always having purpose established, not always having, it's just kind of what you did and would do. And I could have questioned more than things like that, I think, or try to see like what would, you know, like I always did homework and you know, would try to figure it out otherwise or pretend that I did homework or something like that. But yeah, but I agree that the kids around here, it's kind of interesting to do different styles.
I think it's hard to remember that some of them really are legitimately struggling, you know, like as you tell that story about Peyton, I think about Mackenzie as a 2nd grader, she couldn't read. And for a high school teacher who teaches reading, I was freaking out. I mean, you guys remember, like I would sit and read with her and it would, yes, I totally get that. And we got to a point where Ken had to do the reading homework with Mackenzie because I would lose my temper with her, and she legitimately struggled with reading, you know. And so I wonder if I could really put myself in the seat where kids are truly struggling and not just jacking around and not doing their work, you know, and really understand that perception, you know, because I think legitimately some of my students just can't get the rebuttal progression. And once they get it, they'll be like, oh, I'm so dumb. Why didn't that click with me? But I think some of them legitimately are not understanding it.
I think getting that perspective, like that teacher in Denver that did the, I wish you knew this about me or something along those lines, and she had her kids write, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get 3 meals a day, or my parents work all night, or I have to babysit my, I wish you could know that about your kids too, kind of going along those lines, like what are their stories? Because I think sometimes, I know I've looked at a kid and I'm like, God, that kid's so lazy. But then over time, as you get to know them over the semester, you're like, oh, they're not lazy. They're working
Hungry.
2 jobs,
Yeah.
they're hungry, or they're babysitting their brother or sister. So like as a teacher, I think that's something you always wish too, that you got their perspective. I mean, even their own story.
Yeah, sometimes like do you open that can of worms? Like we had this conversation during second round in our department yesterday because Kristen LeClaire had asked kids like to do like a 6-week reflection, like, how are you doing? Like, for real, tell me how it's going. And she had had a kid basically say, like, we're not eating. And then Kristen's like, okay, so, you know, what do I do? And we were kind of talking it through, like, well, obviously she has to tell somebody, but like, is this kid like crying out for help? And it's interesting because it's like when you gain that perspective, you open this whole door that like, sometimes it's nice to know, but sometimes then you can't close that door.
Yeah.
And so it's like I always wonder about that because I want that perspective, but then sometimes I'm like, but do I want that perspective? Like, do I want to know that? And
do I know how to deal with it?
And is it our job?
yeah, that's the other, is that our job?
Well, and perspective can really hinder too, like, I came into the middle of this conversation, sorry, so.
That's all right.
Maybe way off base, but,
No worries.
how, you know, our students are interpreting the material that's in front of them, whether that be an article, whether that be a piece of fiction, you know, I think about these aspects of, you know, age, gender, race, geographic location, I mean, and what, you know, background knowledge they hold to really see more in a piece of text, to look at it with a certain, I don't know, discernment and appreciation for what's in front of them. And I just kind of noticed that these are aspects that hinder even how they react, how they respond, how they comprehend, you know, what's in front of them. And all of these, I'm just kind of looking at some of them, I don't know, they just aren't drawn into it as much, or they don't, they don't appreciate sometimes what an author's doing, like, because they don't have similar experiences, or they don't understand the trials and tribulations of what it's like to be a Black slave, or, you know, something along those lines. So not only, you know, in storytelling itself, but like just how we view the world, you know, and how we perceive things based on our like own experiences and backgrounds can really like hinder how we shape things around us as well.
That's true with history. Like when I was a high school kid, I was like, yeah, history, I was good at it, but I wasn't in love with it. It's like, that's almost one of those things that you have to get to a certain age where you can really appreciate it. So when you're planning for history, you're trying to figure out ways that you can like make it relevant and make it exciting for them, so they're not just like, so that's always a struggle I have. But I think, yeah, that what she said about perspective and age, as Greg mentioned, like that's huge. Like you can take an event and look at it at every point of view of your life, and it's going to change how you perceive it.
And as she mentions temperament, it says your temperament shapes your relationship to the world around you, point of view. It says if you're a fast-paced person, you're going to be irritated by someone who moves slowly. You can give short conversations rather than long ones.
My oldest daughter.
Driving.
I think driving changes everybody. I'm a basically happy, optimistic person, but I'm the world's biggest prick when it comes to driving. And somebody cuts me off, you know, and I might not actually flip them off, but in here, you know.
You have to do it under your dashboard
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
because you never know what's gonna happen.
And if somebody's driving and they got their phone, you know, drives me nuts. It's Europe, they don't tolerate that at all. I mean, you are pulled over. They take your phone and your car.
Well, in Europe, they're not as tied to their phone either. Like being on the train in Europe, I was like, in like Germany, everyone's like looking around and like looking out the window.
Really?
Yeah,
There's something outside, what?
yeah, and then no, it was like no one was on their phones on this train, and we were like, okay, we will not be looking at where we're going next. We will just be sitting here because I don't want to be
Enjoying the
driving.
view.
Yeah, and they are not at all, like, they were, like, observing life. Like, I was the only person on our train from Frankfurt to Munich that had headphones on. The only person on the whole car.
Wow.
German music, you know.
It was so, like, my husband was like, I don't know. And I was like, Mom, this is 3 hours, I'm not listening to my music, but it
I wonder
was
if that
so.
varied from country to country.
Well, so then
That's
I
interesting.
noticed the same thing in Italy. They were like, we took a train in Italy and they were from Venice to Rome, and everyone was talking and having conversations and drinking and
That's weird.
yeah. And then my friend went to France. Yeah, it's fine. My friend went to France and said the same thing,
That's crazy.
that they are not even close to as tied to their pieces of technology.
Like every free second
think that's
we get
awesome.
as Americans, we're like, get our phone.
I know, and it drives me absolutely nuts. Like the kids who in the class have like their phone like on their desk. I'm like, you're not a parent. No kid is gonna call you to like say I'm sick, you have to come pick me up. Like, why do you have to have your phone out? What could possibly be so important? Did your mom forget to drop off your cross country stuff? Like,
I love watching them leave classrooms too, like,
Oh, yeah, they,
like the second the door opens.
oh, I've
like,
watched 4 people walk down the hall and like hit things.
Yes.
Awesome.
Oh, it's so funny.
But you see that,
I just want to
you
walk
see
down
that
with my elbows.
walking down the
I
streets.
intentionally walk over people.
People are walking down the streets. In New York, they have all kinds of trouble with it. People, pedestrians getting hit, just walk down the street.
And falling into potholes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cabs.
well, if you think about like from the perspective of like storytelling and like this idea that she's talking about, like having perspective and changing perspective, like if you are constantly attached to a device, you are not absorbing the world around you. You are not gaining empathy. You are not gaining perspective. You are gaining, I don't know.
Whatever's on your phone.
Whatever's on your phone.
Also,
Well, and your perspective
Run
shapes your
from that.
experiences. It shapes the experiences that you
Yes.
have and will have, and you're always actively change those, you know, to sharing more, like you're saying.
I had a kid write that her favorite thing to do, like on the little beginning of the year inventory, was texting her friends. And I was like, not like hanging out with your friends, like, no, texting. Oh, okay.
Well, you know, to give a different perspective on that, being the oldest person sitting here. My wife's got a couple friends. One of them is a former district level administrator from Aurora. She was like a super person that did all these things in Aurora.
Super person.
I can't remember what she did. I think she was
What
like,
do we call it?
You
She's our
remind us.
super person.
I forget what it is, you know, curriculum or something. I don't know. She was famous in her day. Sue calls her up and says, hey, you want to go to lunch? No, and it's like, Jane, you need to do some things. And all this lady does now is she's on Facebook all the time. And she's got property and animals, so she still takes care of her animals, but she doesn't go out and do anything. Well,
Pictures of her in-
Right.
she at least takes care of her animals, but
She's a cat woman.
no, horses and she's got
Everywhere.
alpacas and horses and
She
stuff.
has 35 cats.
Yeah, but she's online all the time. So a lot of seniors, they're either have nothing to do with technology and they're technology deficient, or they're just as addicted as these kids because they're retired, they don't have things to do. I think of your dad, he stays pretty active. He's playing tennis, he's helping coach, and he's always, you know, he'll give you his opinion if you ask him, stuff like that. He's not tied to computer. My uncle, who was a brilliant guy, he just, once he learned how to use a computer, and all he did is spend all day researching stuff. Just, he would move from Googling this to that, and he'd send me all these things, and he was like a total way right-wing Republican, and so he'd send me all this stuff, trying to convince me to be,
A right-wing Republican.
yes. And
How's that working?
not,
You don't have yourself.
not that I'm a left-wing liberal, but that's a different story. But these things about the kids, now that people are retired, you've got to stop retiring at 60 because you're going to live. You guys, most of you in here, live clean living, young people are going to live to your 95 probably.
35 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It's like at some point,
I'm just like 85.
I'm done. I'm good.
That sounds terrible.
But and of course, when you get in retirement, the world's going to be a lot different than it was when it's just changed so much, so quickly, and so people get a little scared. I think
Yeah.
seniors are like, you're all in with technology, or nothing to do with it at all. My father-in-law couldn't even change channels on TV for 20 years
After the knob left.
after the knob. Right? Whatever was on, he was gonna watch it. It's like, I wanna watch the Packers, but Broncos are on, so I'm just gonna watch that one. It's, that would literally happen.
But that's what, I think, and I know we're getting off topic here, but so much of the, like my master's that I just finished this summer was talking about the use of technology in education and all those things. So what really struck me was like, why do they love their phone so much? Why are they so addicted? Because you're right, they don't have a mom or kids texting them about, emergencies, but like, it boiled down to me, they love it because it's like, it's theirs, and they can make it, like, they get choice.
It's independence.
In how they can, even to like what level, I mean, Peyton just got one this year for 6th grade, and the first week, she changed her stupid wallpaper, like, every day.
Oh, yeah.
And then her ringtone, and then this silly picture, and then, but it's like, because it's theirs, and they can control it, and they can personalize it, and it really challenged me to think about how can I design my learning and my assignments to look more like that than here's a paper worksheet. There's only one way you can write the right answer. There's only one way. And that's harder for biology where it's like content driven. You guys are so much like thematic, and I think there's so many more opportunities for them to personalize what they're writing. Biology's like, you can't really mess up the photosynthesis equation. Like, you can switch around water and CO2, but you can't like change it to nitrogen. But usually they do.
Well, you could, but it wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work. But it challenged me to go, because again, perspective, if we just shut down and go, phones suck, technology, you guys enjoy, like, they'll just go, you're out of touch, whatever. It's not gonna change how they feel about it. So to me, it really challenged me. All my classes were like, what is it about them that makes them so drawn to them, and how can you design choice into your learning? Can you design personalization? Can you design like the same things that they appeal to them about technology? Can you bring that to your classroom and make that same sort of thing appealing? So it was interesting. Like, it really challenged me to think about that kind of stuff. So
And that's connected because it deals with perspective, so you were saying. not
there you go.
to
Thank you.
digress.
Thank
said
you for
not to
connecting
digress,
that.
but it's-
My oldest daughter says we need another flood. Noah type flood.
wipe this up.
Just start over again.
Or a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
Ready for it.
So one of the questions I wrote for our discussion is, what are some things that you have a completely different perspective on now as opposed to when you were younger?
English class for me. I was, math, science kid, and I did not like having to do a lot of reading. I don't want to do that. So Cliff Notes say go until I got a teacher that got one, and it's like, turned it back and said, I can tell you didn't actually read the book. And, I was sort of forced to learn more vocabulary and learn how to actually put pencil to paper and write something. And because of this one person, I ended up getting a journalism scholarship. That's how I got through college.
Yeah, he told me
And
that.
so my perspective on that was, changed. And now when I'm talking to the kids, I try to not say things about other subjects that, because sometimes, people will say things like, I wasn't good at math and I didn't like math or English or science or whatever. And so I try to relate to that. But I'll tell the kids, yeah, they'll complain about some other class when it's difficult. I understand. Like running the mile and P. Gosh, how many of them, hate that, or having to swim laps or whatever. So try to change that perspective. But from when I was younger, I was not having appreciation for all the different things that we were given an opportunity to learn. But you don't see it that way when you're a kid. So your perspectives are going to change there. Sometimes the perspective will get worse about things. My perspective now about the Vietnam War is much worse than when I was a teenager, because I know so much more now than I knew then, or at least I think I know more now. Maybe that's too. There's so much we don't know that never came out, and I'm sure it's the same thing about what's going on, the wars that we're in now.
I think about just school in general. I think, I always, like when we had the opportunity to either hear people talk at in-service or to observe classes, like I think if I were a student now, I would be so much better than I was when I was in high school, because I would appreciate history a lot more. I would appreciate science a lot more, because teachers are really, like, I had teachers at Arapahoe, but it was hit and miss. Like, there was no second chance. If you got an F, you got an F, and there was no way you could go do a test rewrite or whatever. Like, you couldn't redo things. It was just, and I think about that, and I think about how, like, I want to say to these students, you have great teachers. Like, I've seen your teachers, they're amazing, and they truly, I had math teachers that could have cared less, it seems to me. Like, it was like, I couldn't get a concept, and they would just move on, and they didn't, even when I'd sit down with them and say, I don't get this, I don't understand this. I don't feel, at least I don't remember having teachers in high school that I felt were truly vested in me getting better as a learner. It was just kind of, sorry, we got to keep up with the curriculum.
Well,
We got to move on.
I think that makes, I think though, that made for more self-sufficient kids. Like, I think I was far more self-sufficient than our kids are, because I would agree, I don't think that I had teachers that genuinely cared about me as a learner, but I think because I didn't have teachers cared about me as a learner, I cared about me as a learner. And I think in some ways, just to give you a rebuttal, counter argument,
Please.
rebut, but I think that in some ways we coddle them a lot. Like, now that we, like, well, come in and see me, and come in and do, like, I'll spend every single unscheduled hour sitting down with you writing this paper. But in some ways, while that's fantastic, it doesn't teach them how to figure out how to do it on their own. And I always had to figure out how to do it on my own.
You sound like your husband.
That's what I was thinking. My only answer to that question, which is, because it made me think of, could you go back, wouldn't you love to go back and be the athlete that you were in high school? Like, have my physical athlete body from high school, but my brain now, like,
Oh,
if I could play volleyball with the knowledge I've gained of 9 years of a head coach, but play with the body I had in high school, I would be like, unbelievable. That's what made me think about that question.
Yeah, you would.
Now, if I could do the best of both worlds, it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, super.
Bye.
Yeah, so Coach, you guys don't know, most of you met Coach Snyder when he was coaching basketball. Right?
Sure.
We had a term for that, what you were talking about, the wussification of America. We got to play dodgeball with foam balls, but even with foam balls, you can't hit them above the head. So boys, so the loophole in that, boys will go, they play dodgeball, they'll go on purpose and let the ball hit them in the face so that the other guy is out. That's how I'd get you out. I would just let you throw one. I'd stick my head in and let it hit me. Jeremy in the face, you're out, Jeremy. And so there's always, were you a loophole finder when you would play games and stuff in PE and,
What was the word you said, bullfighter?
Loophole.
Loophole. So if you ever teach PE, teaching PE is a great experience because you find we would have all the ball hogs and cheaters in this gym, all the people want to play for fun over here. And it would almost always be a 50-50 split. We had you just combine classes together, just get all the ball hogs and cheaters together. And then they're all in the same one, then the kids who want to play for fun. But so that kind of ties into that. We coddle them, but then the kids who didn't want to be coddled, just want to play knock down, drag out, flag football to the death, they'd have their game and they wouldn't cry about, well, nobody's throwing me the ball. Talk to your quarterback, don't talk to me. That wouldn't happen with that group of kids. Whereas the other group of kids, okay, we're, everybody take turns being quarterback, they figure out, well, this isn't much fun because when Jeremy's a quarterback, he can't throw the ball. So we don't want him to be the quarterback. But we don't want to make him feel bad, so we're going to let him be the quarterback. Right. And so we kind of got past some of that by doing that in that kind of structure. So I agree with you. I can't believe some of these teachers. Well, I gotta give you, Corn's a great example. Her first couple of years, she taught, there were like 20 kids every day after school, and she's running around trying to help them. And now you don't see her working with 20, 25 kids every day when the bell rings. Because she's delegating more back onto them. She was helping these kids, and they're doing number one, they're doing number two. She was doing too much of the work, and they weren't doing nothing. From my observation, I can't tell you Andrea's perspective on it, but I like the fact that she's getting these kids not having so many kids coming in and, because that's what a lot of them do, man, I can't speak for others. They come in and they want somebody to help them with each problem. They just want to get it done and not really learn how
Yeah,
to do
no,
it.
that's not.
But I think a lot of when we go back to like perception, and if I'm looking back like at my younger self, about how much of the world you didn't know about, like what matters is what you like in the microcosm that is right here, your school, your local community, how you fit into that, your family, your friends. But obviously, I mean, I'm not saying like a lot of these kids don't have a lot of life experience, but just thinking about like, I didn't start traveling till a lot. I mean, like out of the country and stuff till after high school, and meeting new people and getting outside the bounds of Littleton, Colorado. And I see that a lot with our students today. It's like, one of your jobs is to be a discerning individual, to question things, to take risks, to meet new people, to like challenge yourself in different capacities, because again, your perceptions shape the experiences that you have, how you see the world, how you see other people, like what you decide to like go after is going to shape a lot of the experiences you have. But I wish that, I don't know, I wish that, not that I could have, but you look at the kids and all their drama, I mean, sometimes I laugh, so I'm like, oh, I've been through that. Like, I know what it's like to have like boy, like relationship drama and, like little things like that. But, and a lot of that hasn't gone away, but they do. I mean, I always try to put myself in their shoes about how hard, again, it is to be a teenager and how you are kind of consumed with just like this aspect of life, and not really seeing, like, you never see the big picture. I mean, I went out with a student Friday, Nick Parker, who wanted me to tell you hello. He's been out of here for like 8 years, and he's working in New York. He does finance. We were talking about like him as a high school student, and he was like, I mean, like, I didn't take anything really seriously. And he was smart too, very, very smart, very gifted young man. But he's like, I didn't care. I didn't care about like the names that were taught to me. I just kind of like took things in and just to like get by. And I think that's how a lot of our students are. But I was kind of thinking too, I probably was the same way. I was a driven student, but I wasn't always like, oh, how is this gonna like matter to me later? How is this gonna be relevant for me later? And looking at that big picture, it's always like here and now instead of, you know what I'm trying to say with that?
The kids live profoundly in the present.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah.
But here's the thing, like, you met with that guy who graduated 8 years ago. Like, you must have done something in your class to make him want to reach out and hang out with you again, I mean, he had to have taken something. If he says, I didn't care in high school, well, something happened there because he wanted to connect
He was
with
just
you
talking
again.
in general, just like,
Right.
you just don't, as a high school student, like you said, you're just kind of in the here and now, and you sometimes go. He was talking about more like I went through the motions. I don't think that nothing didn't matter to him, but just he's like, if I could have seen the world that I was going into, and like I just got done having a conversation with my kids. I'm like, I hate to say this, but like this environment is a pretty like forgiving place. Like,
Yeah.
it gives you second chances. Like we try to respect, but I'm like, out there is, I'm not trying to like scare people, but it's a totally different scenario. And sometimes you're going to come across people that are just going to chew you up and spit you out, and you're going to get slapped upside the head, not literally, but with something that just blindsides you, and you've got to learn to deal with it. And I don't think they always know, like, what are the realities that exist beyond the microcosm that is, But yeah, I always kind of think about that, like what I knew, and always say hindsight's 20/20, but what we don't know when we're younger, what we're kind of sheltered with, and what really like mattered in our lives then, and how those things kind of like change through time, and how we start to open our eyes to more around us and just see more, you know.
I would love to narrate my childhood, like after being a parent for 4 years, and like look at my childhood and kind of appreciate my parents more and everything they did, and you see the things your parents do for you and appreciate it, but then as you get older. And then as a parent, it's kind of interesting to look and you always question what you're doing. Are you doing the right thing? And you have to make some hard choices.
But as a parent, are you focused on their appreciation of you, or are you more focused on meeting their needs and raising them and getting them to, you're not focused on yourself.
Right.
And they're supposed to be self-centric when they're kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, because that's really their responsibility, is to worry about self, except for those times when you give them things to do to help out around the house or whatever. And that's what makes it hard for some kids, that deviation from self-centricity that you hope they have. Well, with the not self-centered, well, you've got some problems. So not gonna care about anything. Gotta care
We
about
just have a
self.
different appreciation of our parents.
Yeah.
From them, you know.
I think though that like we're currently moving into that whole, Mackenzie's in middle school now and she's 12 and she doesn't really want to do family stuff on the weekends anymore. And it's like this whole new thing, because we're kind of like, but Friday night is family movie night.
Comes out of the blue. Then.
Like,
You don't want to be with us.
yeah, like what is this? David doesn't hold my hand when we are in the parking lot anymore. And I'm like, I don't know. It's awesome. Like having kids that are self-sufficient and, on their own and kind of pulling the weight is awesome. But at the same time, it's like,
These are babies.
you're supposed to love me forever.
Yeah.
And want to
Well,
hold my
that's the
hand.
thing though, it's like as my kids get older, I'm kind of like sad. You're sad, but you're not, like you're excited for the next stage and to watch them develop, but there's a part of you that's kind of like, like they're not as dependent. I don't know, that's all right.
But I'm just like, wow, and we had, Ken uploaded the new operating system on his phone yesterday, so he was getting Mackenzie's messages. And Mackenzie had sent a message to a boy from Summer, and it sounded really desperate. And I was like, how do I handle this? Because we weren't going to lie to her. And we basically said, this happened. Daddy got this message and she completely freaked out. And then we were talking in the car and I'm like, was it Christian? And she's like, it's a new friend at school. I'm like, was it Christian? She's like, Mom. And I said, it's okay. You can just tell me it was Christian and we'll move on. She's like, it was Christian. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to say one thing.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And then I tried to it was a teachable moment, because I remember very much being that little girl who was desperate for boys' attention. And my best friend was like this cool girl who didn't worry about boys, and they all flocked to her and not to me. And so I tried to teach this lesson to Mackenzie, and then she kind of opened up a little bit more about what was going on. When I said, well, when I was your age, this is what happened to me, and this is what I know now. And then she kind of then was more willing to tell me more of the story, as opposed to, this is how you sound in this text. You might want to not text like that, because I didn't tell her why. Like I didn't give her a why. I don't know. It's an interesting place. We should probably move on to our second video, because we have 10 minutes. So artful manipulation of time and focus. So the first question that we asked online was, narrator artfully controls what the audience looks and how the audience attends to certain features of your story. Identify one feature of the story that would be appropriate to use of description to slow time down. Brad Jansen said the moment that his wife was walking down the aisle, he'd like to slow that moment down and kind of capture it. And then Anne said, moments where you want your audience to hang on your every word, maybe like revealing a big decision or something that lies around the corner or something that comes out of somebody's mouth, like kind of spending time slowing that down. So I was trying to think of a moment that I would like to slow down
As a story? Like-
Yeah, like in your story, in your history, like Brad, like with the moment in his wedding or whatever. And I remember somebody saying to me very specifically right before Ken and I got married, take a moment during the ceremony where you just take it all in, because you're not going to remember the wedding. You're not.
That's true.
And so I remember very, very specifically one moment in my wedding. Everything else is kind of a blur, but I remember that moment where I made an effort to say, take this moment in, because you're not going to remember everything else. And it's true, you know, and so if I were telling the story, I could definitely slow down that moment because I remember it very, very specifically. But everything else I don't remember. Like my mom's like, don't you remember this happened? And I'm like, nope, I don't remember that. I don't know. I can think of a lot of things I'd like to speed up in my story, like skip over in my history.
I just slow down like all of college, just those whole 4 years.
And mine are about sports, like thinking about sports,
Mm.
games, and just those great ones. Like,
Good memoir writing tactics. So I think about that every time I know that really only applies to the four of us, but I think about that a lot when we're watching these videos. Like, that's a really good way of writing memoir, like to slow down specific moments and speed up others and play with that time and place a lot. Just good strategies. Like for me, as I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, I need to remember to talk about that. Like when we do that second semester.
Mhm.
So it's just good writing.
yeah.
I have no idea why I wrote this question down. I'm not even going to ask it. It's so
No.
stupid.
What is it?
How does what how does what you're wearing affect your delivery of a lesson?
Well, if you keep wearing the same thing over and over again, like she does in her videos, you get a comment like Audra made last week.
It's true.
What?
She said she wears
to
pants
go.
when she performs because.
Yeah, when they flash it to that
Because she's
cut, she's masculine. She's masculine in her delivery.
So she could do,
Male
the
gender
walk
narrator.
where she does I don't know, it was kind of crazy. It was
Oh,
like-
that's why I asked.
And she had the orange. She
I'm
had the
like, I
orange
don't even
dress on.
remember.
She's
Why?
like, I wear pants when I perform.
Well, you know, stand-up comedians, it looks like they don't think about that, but a lot of times they just want to look really casual and just pretty laid back. Has a lot to do with it. Rock and roll artists are gonna, the old school rock and roll artists are gonna look a lot
Yeah.
different what they wear than say a rap artist. A rap artist is gonna have a certain aura they may want to present. Unlikely you'll see somebody like Drake come out in a flannel shirt and blue jeans with tatters. You know, he's gonna dress a little bit differently.
Ooh, so do you think there's a different
Drake's
expectation
the only one I can think of.
for different teachers in the building?
What's that?
Do you think there's a different expectation for different
Oh,
curriculums in
some
the
people
building?
have crazy things like wild ties on Wednesdays, things like that, you know.
No, I know that, but like,
Further for some.
I don't
Carrie
know.
Levi always makes comments to me about how our department dresses up. She's like, oh, you English people and all your heels.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of young.
Well, she goes,
kids
I just think she just jokes with me about that a lot.
Yeah.
When I see her.
But there are some people that don't, and maybe it's just the professional in me, but sometimes I'll walk in this building and I'm like, you really wore that to teach today? You know, like, okay.
Look in the mirror sometimes.
Ooh, Jeremy.
Ooh.
You know, but like,
When I was in high school, the men they always wore a shirt and tie, and the women always wore heels, and I just thought, heels every day, you gotta be kidding me. Of course, I couldn't relate to it, but I asked my mom about it, because my mom was a seamstress, and she worked at a sewing machine store, so she would wear things that she made, and then she taught sewing lessons. The day she taught sewing, she didn't wear heels. She says, I can't imagine teaching every day, moving in a classroom wearing heels, but I remember all of them. I don't know if that was the dress code, because I don't know. The time from 1975 to the time I started teaching in 71 to 75, huge difference. There's like this huge change. School teachers were wearing jeans and men had long hair, and none of that was going on in 69, 70, 71. It's like the whole time warp occurred in that 4 or 5 year frame. But yeah, what teachers were wearing I think that kind of goes through all kinds of things. What do you expect to see from a male politician when he goes up to give a speech?
But it's also how your audience perceives things too, because sometimes, I think it's an interesting question actually, because, I mean, sometimes that might give someone an added like confidence that they need, you know, they feel comfortable and
Mhm. Whatever they're wearing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
sometimes it could be to and then, you know, show possibly other assets or characteristics, like physical. Well, you know what I mean? But like, some people do that, like. But I mean, to take the attention off, like, oh, I don't think this is gonna be very good, so
I'm
there are
gonna
other
look
things,
good.
yeah, if I look good.
It sounds like me every day. Golden dancer.
Golden dancer.
Gotta work a little here.
I wonder, like, I always tell my students, like, on testing day, like ACT or SAT or whatever, I'm like, don't just roll out of bed and go, like, get up and do your normal routine and then go take the test, because like most of us, when our alarm doesn't go off or we don't get up and do our normal routine, we feel a little like out of it, like I don't
Off,
feel
yeah.
normal, you know, whereas, and I'll also say, but if you don't get up and shower and get dressed, don't do that just because it's a test day. Like, just do your normal daily routine.
Well, I know coaches hate it when they have a game on a day where there's like a teacher in service and the kids have that day off. You can almost count on a lesser performance. And if it's like, let's say it's a football game and one team had school or the other team didn't have school,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great recipe for an upset.
Right.
You've got this team here is ranked a little higher. This team went to school. This team had the whole day off.
Yeah.
It levels the playing field. So a lot of coaches will say, okay, we're going to have a film session or whatever. And those kinds of things affect performance.
This is back to what you said, I think, about how, or somebody said, how do you think your students perceive you as their teacher? Is that how you want to be perceived? And then finally, storytellers show and tell. Do we do that when we're teaching? How? Those were the only two questions I had.
Repeat that last one.
Storytellers show and tell. Do we do that when we're teaching? How? And I could see this happen in a math class, because you would show them, or you would tell them, here's your math problem. And then you would show them how it's applicable to said thing. Like,
Oh,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense to me. And I think we try to do that in literature. Like, they'll read a story and we'll tell them the facts of the story, but then we make that applicable. And I do that a ton in my senior class, because I feel like I have to make it more applicable for them to buy in, whereas ninth graders are like, whatever, tell me whatever, I'll believe you. Whereas seniors are kind of like, why are we reading the Epic of Gilgamesh? Like, what does this have to do with me?
Well, in math, we have word problems, which we call a verbal representation. Let's say, like, I always open, when we start teaching about parabolas, I always open with either the Golden Gate Bridge or St. Louis Arch, both parabolic, and or sometimes I'll throw like a satellite dish up there. Say they think it's a circle, but it's actually parabolic, and that gives them a concrete representation. And so I think sometimes they need that the concreteness of seeing something visual.
Now, is that applicable, and this is going to sound really ignorant, applicable to geometry or to algebra?
Oh, it's more applicable to geometry.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to come up with real life examples.
Yeah, see, I
Let's
think,
pull out the globe, perseverance, anything.
I think that's why I was better at geometry than algebra. Like, the problems in geometry seemed a little more,
No, I haven't done
I could
research on it,
grasp
but
them
by observation,
easier.
kids that are really good at English and good at art, they tend to thrive in geometry more so than, like, say, algebra 2.
Yeah.
It's just so much more visual.
were you better in geometry?
I don't know. I went up through
You were?
calculus,
Were you?
so-
Probably not.
I just was really bad at algebra 2. I think I was okay at everything else.
Yeah.
I was stuck at algebra 2.
We did a trick.
I loved trig.
was pretty cool.
You
Didn't
must not have done as bad as
didn't pass
algebra two.
algebra two.
I think, because
I had a really bad algebra 2 teacher. She
Yeah,
would make
that
me
might
go
have
sit
been.
in the hall every day. She hated me.
And on that note.
and you know as a teacher, you pick out certain kids to hate and,
She hated me.
and
Oh, she did not like me, no.
Well, what were you doing? Because we always know it's about the student, not the teacher.
I don't know.
she hates me, I don't know why.
I
she
thought I
hates me.
was a pretty good kid,
I
but
love my algebra teacher. We used to go steal his picture off the wall.
Oh
my algebra
my.
1 teacher had the nicest butt.
Whoa, and with that.